Did y'all remember to put on some sunscreen? Because today, we're going on a journey across 4 sweltering, beautiful, and potentially dangerous deserts. I had to include that last part for legal purposes, but don't you worry, no one actually ever gets harmed on these tours. Most of the time. Anyways, shall we be on our way? Okay, please, after you. Our sizzling journey begins on Sage, an island inspired by what many refer to as the Main Street of the USA, Route 66. Said to symbolize the renewed spirit of optimism pervasive across the country after both surviving the economic collapse of the Great Depression and post-World War II, we can really feel that positive, heartfelt optimism built into every nook and cranny of this breathtaking island. The creator even put in the immense work to create this extremely well-detailed windy road code that has around 27 pieces in total. It's massive! Along the road, we see a lovely balance with subtle splashes of nature, and even this adorable Dairy Queen rest stop sporting its own little gas station. All of the details fit together seamlessly, helping to make this spot feel a little bit messy and very realistic. And I don't know about you, but when I think about deserts, I think scarcity, not much life, mostly barren, but this island is a prime example of how you can add a sense of vibrancy and life to a desert design without losing that desert feeling. This large campsite hiking area does just that. There are enough human touches that help the area to feel cozy and safe, and we even see welcomed hints of color with the cacti and orange windflowers scattered all about. We can even explore short hiking trails marked with this lovely sandstone code design that leads us to cute little hidden spots. And can we talk about this view for a second? This is a quintessential desert view that is captivating. So beautifully done. The other main feature of this island is its residential areas. All of the houses are scattered across the beaches, and they're divided into cute little neighborhoods that are color coordinated. Here, we see a lightly decorated yet still super warm and cozy purple-themed area that blends into this other space with pops of orange and green. What makes these housing locations so appealing is how simple their designs are. They mimic that desert scarcity idea, but they still manage to feel colorful and lived in. Sage is a great example of how you can create a dynamic desert feeling with winding, spacious terraforming, and it even has an in and out with a drive-through. The whole island is a treasure trove of desert inspiration. Now, who's grabbing a burger? Scrumptious. What's most striking about our next island, Sunrose, is that it draws inspiration from the red sand deserts of the Pilbara region of Western Australia. We can see that inspiration most prominently in the use of the dark dirt pathing that gives off a slight red tone. This idea of using real-world inspiration works really well because it offers a guide that you can follow when planning your island designs. For example, the Pilbara region is represented in nearly every design we will see on the island. Here, we've got a gorgeous flower field that looks like nature itself tried its hand at painting. The combination of vibrant flowers with soft tone flowers creates a visually pleasing experience, and there's even a little sitting spot where you can just plop on down and take in the scenic view. Mining in the Pilbara region is a billion-dollar industry, and we can see that represented here on the island as well in this mining area. I thought it was especially clever to keep the color scheme centered around those light browns and that rusted orangey red because they blend so perfectly with the darker pathing. Another build idea that I thought was just brilliant is here where we can see an interpretive take on the ASKAP radio telescope located at the Murchison Radio Observatory. This one telescope is actually made up of 36 dish antennas that all work together to generate 100 trillion bits of data per second. It's incredible to see it represented so beautifully here on Sunrose. I think what's most exciting about drawing inspiration from the real world for your island designs is that you get to feel more deeply connected to what you create because you're building your passions onto the island itself. It allows for a more personal experience both for you as the island builder, And also for others who might visit your island. They get the privilege of seeing curated bits of yourself, and I think that's something really special to share. Armadillo is a blast from the not-so-distant past, inspired by the American Wild West, which spanned from about 1865 to around 1900. This era was notoriously known for its bad boy outlaws, business and banking tycoons, and who could forget back when men would head on down and gather around at the local saloon. Generally speaking, Wild Western is sort of like a subcategory that fits beautifully into the broader DESERTCORE theme, and I've noticed that it's been gaining some traction lately within the community. Pertaining to this island itself, the biggest compliment I can offer its creator is that she's basically the queen of Animal Crossing architecture. She consistently manages to include so many details and layers to her buildings that enhance the overall experience of her island creations. I highly recommend checking out her socials if you're looking for tips and tricks to build realistic looking buildings for your island. Beyond her brilliance in architecture, we can also see lots of beautiful nature elements. This rock code in particular fits perfectly with the Wild West desert vibe by adding extra dimension to the look of the island. Though my favorite part of Armadillo is this long train track. I know that train tracks are kind of like old news in the Animal Crossing community, but I really enjoy the simplicity of this design and the way it cuts through this little section of mountain. It's a unique design choice that I just don't see very often. Also worth noting is that this desert appearance is created by utilizing light dirt pathing during the autumn season while incorporating subtle splashes of a sand pathing code placed over top. Armadillo represents a unique approach to building within the DESERTCORE theme for anyone who might feel like their desert island is looking a little bit too barren. It offers a lot of potential ideas to try and explore. Eden is unique in that it's entirely empty except for where it's not. Let's say that roughly 80% or so of the island is just sand, but as you get closer to the center, we start to see small bits of nature creeping their way into the desert. It's like the oasis is daring to expand into something bigger than it already is, but it's at odds with the desert's unrelenting harshness. We're able to run all the way around this patch of vibrant life, and then as we make our way into the oasis, we're greeted by a burst of color. Everything feels wild, almost enchanted. All of the ruins scattered around create a feeling like we're stepping back into some type of civilization lost in time. Nature's ferocious determination apparently won out in the end, as it likely always will. The whole idea is fairly simple, but it's beautiful. Nature is messy and chaotic, and we can see this truth represented in the sporadic placement of all the plants. I really appreciate that the island creator also made sure to include small ledges and narrow streams because they further enhance the dreamlike oasis effect that the island offers. Eden presents a slightly different lens that we can look through as we continue to gather ideas for our islands. And now it's villager time! Here are 6 villagers who I think would fit perfectly on a desert-themed island. Let me know which villagers you think scream desert life in the comments. Alright, let's get roasting! Alfonso is a lazy villager who reminds me of someone who is obsessed with sandboxes. He loves to wiggle his toes in the sun-soaked sand, and sometimes he pretends he's a cat who's a little bit confused. Basically, you may not want to play in the same sandbox he just got out of, because you probably wouldn't enjoy the buried treasure you'd find. Oh, it's still so smelly. Somebody please clean it up. Annabelle! Aside from being a peppy villager named after a horror film, she seems like the kind of person who's always spouting out random nature facts. She'll say something like, "You know, if you mix a few drops of rattlesnake venom with cacti juice, it'll help you get to sleep faster." But what she neglects to tell you is that you'd likely never wake up. Perhaps the horror film was actually based off of her. Just saying, something to think about. Anka is a snooty cat with a better-than-thou mentality. She thinks she's all that and a saucer of cream. And honestly, she is. She absolutely is. Look at her! So precious! Graham is a smug little archaeologist who one time discovered a long-lost desert kingdom, and now he never lets you hear the end of it. He just goes on and on about how brilliant he is. So one day, you tell him about this little sand pit that you just saw Alfonso rolling around in earlier, and you suggest that Graham do some digging over there. So he does. And what does he find? Another freaking lost city! You just can't with him. But at least you can find a smidgen of solace in the fact that he smelled pretty rank the entire time. Thank you, Alfonso. Paula is the kind of sisterly lady who swears that carrying a rose quartz in your pocket will bring you everlasting love, though she has been carrying one for over a decade and is still alone. So perhaps take her wisdom with a grain of salt, and a block of rhodonite. Wart Jr. has always been a snappy, cranky little boy. He wandered back into town one day after being lost in the desert for 3 years. No one is entirely sure how he survived, especially since he'll never talk about what happened to him, but his gaze is often just so unsettling that you kind of wish he'd just never made it back. Wait a sec. Does that make me a bad person? Now we come to the big question. Is DESERTCORE right for you? This theme offers a lot of variability in how you could design your island. There are so many real-world places that you could draw inspiration from, and that might make your designing process a bit easier because the real world would literally be your guide. DESERTCORE is also a pretty solid theme for any terraforming comfort level. Many desert areas are wide, open, and flat, so if you're not a fan of landscaping or waterscaping, this is a theme that doesn't really require you do much, if any at all. Likewise, this is also a great theme for anyone who does want to challenge themselves to create terraformed masterpieces. There is no wrong way to navigate this theme, or really any theme for that matter, because everything about island designing is subjective. The downsides that come to mind are that this theme may be more difficult when trying to find a healthy balance between that dry, arid desert feeling while still incorporating enough vegetation and just life in general. And placing all of the pathing all over the island would likely get very tedious very quickly. In the end, it comes down to you. Do you want to play around with designing your own interpretation of a desert? There's no wrong answer, and if you're still on the fence, check out my video on how to use your island as a mood board. I go over some helpful ways that you can sample a theme first before you fully commit. You may find it helpful. And until next time, bye!